it's fascinating then that OCD can distort your reality.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I remember like in the thick of my OCD, like when I was really like deep in it, I honestly was so in my own head that I didn't really know what was real and what wasn't real. I couldn't really tell the difference of what was going on.
Right.
I mean, like I could, of course, but I live with my sister, and just like you said, you're checking here, and like we lived together, and you know, there were some moments where I was like, "What is this real? Is this not real?" Like it just got really cloudy for me, and I couldn't really.
And even your sister, your best friend, isn't enough to convince you of what's real or not.
No, and at that point, I wasn't even like speaking about it like vocally, you know, to her. So, and I felt so much like shame and guilt. Like I honestly almost couldn't even like look at her. Like, and we're together every day. We do everything together. We share a friend group. It's like we're literally best friends. So it's like I'm staring at her every day, and I'm like, what type of a person am I? Like, I wouldn't want her around someone if I don't want her to be around me. Like, I wouldn't want her around someone else that was like having negative thoughts.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to talk about this also because I feel like there's so much, there could be so much judgment around this.
Yeah, but I think you're right, and I'm glad that you brought that up. This stigma idea is there. Right?
Yeah, it's like for someone to think like, oh, like my fear is like, oh, someone could think like, oh, she's a dangerous person or like she's crazy, and it's also like, I don't know. I've also passed that point because I do feel like some OCD is something I'm always gonna like deal with in my life, and I think anyone that is in my life is gonna know about it, and I choose to not live in fear of it and give it the power to be like, oh, I can't like share my story because I should be ashamed of that, you know? It's like I would rather like stand in power and be able to like tell my story and be like, I'm on the other side of it, and these thoughts don't define you as a person, and with proper treatment, like, you know.
Well, if there isn't a tagline for treatment, I don't know what it is other than what you just said. So
yeah,
that's amazing.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that very much. You know, I've been treating OCD for 25 years now, and I've said I either work with the most dangerous people in the entire world or I work with people with OCD. It's one or the other. And so far, I've not had a patient who ended up on the top of the newspaper and said, they actually went and did it. We knew it was going to happen one day, and there it is. They did it. Yeah.
I think, you know, part of ERP therapy, just kind of like poking your head out of that fear zone of like, obviously just like making jokes like that and like, you know, poking fun at it. It kind of like pops your head out of that fear zone of being like, this is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I thought of that because you said the news, haven't seen it in the newspaper yet, but I remember one of my assignments like through ERP was like, I was writing like crazy narratives.
Oh yeah, those are great.
So fun. It was so hard, but
yeah. Well, and at one point I'm going to bet, I don't know, and you tell me how far you want to go with this, but at one point they probably asked you to think about harming your sister.
Yeah. It was definitely in the narratives. It's so funny because when you actually like I said, like talk about it, and your head just kind of like pokes out of that fear zone, and you're like, this is so absurd. I think for me, like over exaggerating, like has like completely helped me. Yeah.
And who of us hasn't maybe been caught off in traffic, and maybe this is just me, I don't know, but who of us hasn't been caught off in traffic and thought, I'm going to, throttle you or something like that. And how many people, otherwise we just see, 12,000 people arrested per day because of traffic incidents based on that.
I mean, what if off a cliff?
What if?
That's just my motto. I don't like to think like, anytime my brain goes, what if, I just say off a cliff. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said what if, because it's my least favorite phrase in the entire world. And it is OCD's favorite phrase in the world. How has your life been affected by what ifs, and how do you deal with them differently now that you've had treatment?
I think my whole life I kind of was like, you know what, like I said before, like I would be like, let me go to the doctors because what if, but like I can make sure I'm safe. Like I'm going to get my blood taken, and my blood's fine, then I'm fine. Like I don't know. I'd always kind of like try to like prove my what ifs like wrong. And I think finally after treatment, like I said, what if off a cliff? I don't really do what ifs. And I mean, they still pop up in my head, of course. Just the way that I respond to them is completely different. Sometimes I'll just be like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. And we don't have to know, do we?
You know? No. And I think that's like such a big part of recovery is being like, anything could happen to anyone.
Of course. OCD demands certainty.
Yeah. Demands certainty. And it's like, it's also with questions you can't answer. Like, am I going to get cancer one day? I don't know. Like, who knows? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But like, I can't answer that question. There's no, like, I can't go like take a test to see if I'm going to one day. I mean, I don't know, maybe these days you can. But like, you know, it's questions you usually cannot answer.
Right.
That nobody could answer. But the difference with somebody with OCD is, it's so funny because back to when I saw the TikTok, I remember the next day I said to my sister, I was like, it's so weird, I can't get that TikTok out of my head. It's like, I can't stop thinking about it. It's so creepy.
Yeah.
And the difference between me and her, someone that doesn't have OCD, is she's like, you want to know what? Like, we talk about it now. She's like, I had the same thought you had. Like, I put myself in that position. I was like, oh my God, that would be terrible. But she was able to move on from the thought. Somebody with OCD can't move on from the thought. So that's the difference. It's like a loop, and it just like on repeat, and it's very demanding, and yeah, it needs an answer. So I think that's the difference with someone who like with OCD brain and someone who doesn't have OCD. Am I right? Or
yeah. One of the things that I get I do a webinar every week, and one of the things that I get, and I'll be interested to hear your answers, why does it have to feel so real? How real did it feel?
Oh, it felt completely real. I mean, I literally looked different in the mirror. Like, I felt like I looked different. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the feeling disorder, right? That's what everyone likes to call it. Felt very real. Very happy I'm past it. But yeah, it felt as real as like anything. Like I knew, like it's like, you know, it's not, but like you feel like you, like in your gut, like, you know, it's not, but there's no like, but you feel like it could be.
Well, there's that what if again, right? Yeah. OCD's nickname is the doubting disorder, and it demands this absolute answer from you, but it won't ever accept it. Oh no, there's no good enough answer. Never. So yeah. Did you ever find a good enough answer? No. And right. That was the answer. Is not answering was my answer. There you go. That's where I, regained my life and myself back, is being at peace with the fact that there is no answer. And that's okay. And that's still okay to this day. I mean, I'm not going to say I don't still have, I struggle still with my obsessions, which are fears. But I do not engage with it. I try not to engage with it. Some days I am so exhausted. Sure. From, it feels like a phone is ringing almost in your head. Yeah. And it's like you want to pick up the phone so bad. And there's been days where I'm just so exhausted, where at the end of the day I'll just break down in tears because it's so hard not to perform compulsions. Yeah. But it's so much better in the long run when you don't. And I'm not saying that it's easy, because it's not. I went to an outpatient program. I was there for 3 weeks, and I think sometimes it's hard to say oh, just don't answer. Don't answer the phone. You don't have to you don't have to you don't have to engage with the thought, but it's so hard not to. Obviously it takes a lot of practice, and it is hard sometimes. It's hard.